There is a book in Okinawa that was never printed. For most of 2 centuries, it existed only as brush copies, passed from one man to one student, each copy carrying forward the errors of the last. Diagrams of 2 figures locked at the wrists, herbal formulas, a chart of the places on a body where pressure does damage. No author, no date. The men who owned it did not agree on where it came from. The story goes like this. Around the year 500, an Indian monk walks east out of the subcontinent, crosses into China, and arrives at a temple on the wooded slopes of Mount Song in Henan. He finds the monks there physically ruined by long meditation, falling asleep sitting up, bodies gone soft. So, he teaches them a set of exercises he brought from home. Those exercises become Shaolin Kung Fu. Shaolin Kung Fu crosses the sea to a small kingdom in the Ryukyu Islands and becomes karate. One man, one journey, 3 countries. You have heard some version of this. It is on temple placards in Henan, in the opening pages of karate manuals, in documentaries with drone shots of mist over pagodas. The monk has a name, Bodhidharma, Damo in Chinese, Daruma in Japanese. He is a real person, attested in writing within a generation or 2 of his life. Almost everything else in that paragraph is either unproven or demonstrably invented, and the way it was invented is a better story than the legend.
There are 2 early Chinese texts that mention him, and both are close enough to his lifetime to matter. The first is Yang Xuanji's record of the Buddhist monasteries of Luoyang, written around 547. It gives Bodhidharma roughly 4 sentences. He is a monk from the western regions, Persia, the text says. He stands in front of a gilded pagoda, praises it, and chants. That is all. The second is Dao Xuan's collected biographies of eminent monks from 645. Here he is South Indian, of the Brahmin caste, and he teaches a method of meditation called wall-gazing. Neither text mentions exercise, neither mentions fighting, neither mentions a single technique, a weapon, or a student learning to strike. Later tradition made him a king's 3rd son from the Tamil country, near Kanchipuram, which is about 300 miles and 1 mountain range away from the Kerala coast, where Kalaripayattu is practiced. The martial Bodhidharma does not surface for roughly 1,000 years after his death, and when he finally appears holding something other than a begging bowl, he appears in a document with a forged date on it.
The document is called the Yi Jin Jing, the Muscle and Tendon Change Classic. It is a manual of breathing and stretching, and its preface claims it was written in 628 by a Tang general who received it from a monk who found it sealed in a wall at Shaolin after Bodhidharma's death. That preface is the origin of everything. It is also a fake. Chinese textual scholars were already pulling it apart by the early 19th century, pointing out that the preface uses vocabulary that did not exist in the 7th century and names official posts that had not yet been created. In the 1930s, the historian Tang traced the actual text to about 1624 and to a Taoist on Mount Tai, who wrote under the name Zining. That is roughly 1,100 years after the date on the cover. The legend then got its modern engine in 1915, when a popular book titled The Secrets of Shaolin Boxing Methods put Bodhidharma at the head of the whole Chinese tradition and sold enormously. Legends do not need to be old to feel ancient. None of this means Shaolin monks did not fight. They did, and the evidence is carved in stone and still standing on the temple grounds. There is a stele erected in 728 that reproduces a letter of thanks from the man who became Emperor Taizong. In 621, he was fighting a rival warlord for control of the region, and 13 Shaolin monks took part in that campaign on his side. Real event, real reward, real grant of land and war rights. What the stele does not say is that an Indian taught them anything. And for most of its documented martial history, Shaolin was famous for one thing, and it was not empty hands. It was the staff. When the general Qi Jiguang surveyed the fighting methods of the empire in the 1560s, Shaolin appears in his book For the Pole. The earliest detailed Shaolin fighting manual we have, from around 1610, is a staff manual. Meanwhile, a 1st century imperial bibliography, compiled 400 years before Bodhidharma was born, already lists a 6-chapter treatise on bare-handed combat. China was not waiting.
Now go west, to the Malabar coast, and to Kalari Payatu. The name is literal. Kalari, a training ground. Payatu, practice. And the ground is exact rather than metaphorical. The traditional pit is sunk about 4 feet into the earth, 42 feet long by 21 wide, roofed, entered down a flight of steps into cool air and packed red clay. Students oil their bodies. Some of the deep massage is delivered with the instructor's feet. The word Kalari does appear in Old Tamil poetry, but there it means an arena or a battlefield, not a curriculum. The art we can actually describe, its sequences, its weapons, its vital point medicine, is documented from roughly the 12th century onward, bound up with Nair warrior lineages and with formal duels fought on behalf of feuding households. Then it nearly died. After the Malabar revolts of the early 1800s, the British disarmed the region, and open training went quiet for close to a century. What is taught today was substantially rebuilt in the 1920s in Thalassery by a teacher named C.V. Narayanan Nair. It is a magnificent art. It is not an unbroken 3,000-year line, and no source has it leaving India.
The third leg of the legend is the one that holds up, and it does not run through Henan. In 1372, the Ryukyu kingdom became a tributary of Ming China. Ryukyuan court chronicles credit 1392 with the arrival of the 36 families, Chinese settlers from Fujian, who founded a village outside Naha, and whose descendants spent the next 500 years moving back and forth across that water as clerks, envoys, and students. Karate's own name admitted the debt. It was written with the character for Tang, China hand, and read Tode. Only in 1936, at a meeting of Okinawan masters in Naha, was the character swapped for its homophone, meaning empty. Kanryo Higaonna sailed to Fuzo in the 1870s and trained under a man the Okinawans remembered as Ru Ko, whose actual Chinese name is still argued over. And that hand-copied book from the beginning, the Bubishi, is a Fujianese white crane text, medicine and all. Fujian, not Henan. As for the southern Shaolin Temple meant to bridge the two, no one agrees where it stood. 3 towns claim it, and the tale of its burning descends mainly from the founding myth of an 18th century secret society.
So why does the story survive every debunking? Partly because it is useful. A Buddhist patriarch gives fighting monks a respectable ancestor, which matters a great deal when your monastery has to explain armed men in robes to an emperor. And in the 20th century, with Asia busy shedding European empires, a single Asian source for all Asian martial arts was an attractive idea from several directions at once. Here is the strongest case for the other side, and it deserves stating properly. Monks genuinely did travel between India and China for centuries. Indian breathing discipline, Indian medicine, and Indian vital point theory moved along that road with the sutras, and traces of that vocabulary are visible in later Chinese internal training. Diffuse influence is entirely plausible. What is missing is the chain, the named teacher, the dated transmission, the technique you can actually follow from one country to the next. And there is a plainer explanation waiting. People hit each other everywhere.
Hundreds of wrestling pairs are painted on a tomb wall at Beni Hassan in Egypt from around 2000 BC, and Greeks were competing in pancration by 648 BC, and neither had heard of the other.
That book in Okinawa still exists, in perhaps a dozen hand-copied versions that quietly disagree with one another. Nobody knows who wrote it. That is the honest shape of most martial history. Copies, gaps, and a good story growing into the empty space. If that is the kind of gap you like sitting in late at night, there is more of it here.